I just realized a few things. I just realized that, number one, I've been recording the last 2 sections of video on vertical, which I didn't mean to do, but I've already done it, and I'm not going to repeat it. So, sorry, everybody. I'm recording the 3rd one in order to keep it consistent in vertical. Also, I realized that I have gone way, way, way off tangent, and I started talking about my life, which I intended to do in further installments of the story, and I meant to keep it completely on A Christmas Carol. I'll get back to that, but I want to finish a little bit. So the end of it was I had this unbelievable birthday party where I was shown now to be not only the strange kid, not only to be the funny kid, not only to be the fat kid, but now the rich kid. And so everybody in school not only didn't know how to deal with me at that point, but the bullies really had something to hate me about. And so I was picked on constantly, and I never fit in with anybody. I hated school, and I did poorly for a very long time. I never wanted to, when I came home from school, I never wanted to deal with school. So I didn't want to deal with homework. I didn't want to deal with anything. I just wanted to stay at my safe haven at home. And from that point on, dealing with other kids was awful. I never wanted to deal with anybody else anyway. So that was my childhood. I'll get into later parts of my life in other parts of the story, but that was the beginning. That's, that was really the beginning of it. That was the foundation of where my psyche came from. And then, as I grew up, I didn't really fit in. I still didn't fit in school. I was still always the class clown. I was still always pretty strange. I dressed differently. I listened to different music. I grew up. I never hardly ever listened to the radio except, for super light FM elevator music, and all the Broadway. I listened to tapes and then later CDs of all the Broadway stuff that my parents and my sister were into, and that was pretty much my life until college. In college, I all of a sudden got all these new friends, which I'll go into at some other point. And so I'm going to fast forward through life. I had all these experiences in school. I had all these experiences in college. I had all these experiences with jobs where, just big learning experiences where I, kept doing my best, and sometimes I didn't do my best. When I was starting out my career, I couldn't find an immediate job, so I worked as a temp agent. I was a Kelly girl. I worked for the Kelly company as a secretary, and I went around to different companies, and I didn't know. I was good at computers, but I didn't know any of the secretarial. At the time, there was this program called WordPerfect, and I didn't know what the hell it was. And Kelly said, come in on the day that you're going to be going into the job. We'll train you on it, and you'll go to the job knowing it. And I did. I went to the Kelly agency. They sat me down in front of a training computer, and after an hour, I pretty much knew WordPerfect. And I went into the job, and I would, know these different things. I knew well enough that I was able to actually train. Sorry about that. I was able to train their secretaries on how to use the program. So I had some success as a temp agent, and I went from job to job, but it wasn't really fantastic. And eventually my father, being the family practice doctor, very successful doctor, he had privileges, and he had a big position at Robert Wood Johnson, New Brunswick, and also at St. Peter's, New Brunswick. But he got me a job at Robert Wood Johnson in medical records, and I worked there for a number of years until I was stupid enough to talk about my salary to one of the people working next to me. I was naive, and I didn't know that one of the things that you never talk about in life is with other people is your salary. And it turned out that I was making significantly more than my coworkers who had been there for many years before me. And so I caused this big uproar in medical records, and they had to terminate me. And so then I went to work for my dad's office at his front desk, and I worked there for 9 years, during which my laziness and my thoughtlessness and my selfishness kicked in, and I pretty much ran his business into the ground. He had me in charge of submitting not only the front desk, but also to submit all his insurance claims. And there was just insurance claims that I just didn't do anything about. There was mail that I threw in the garbage because I didn't feel like dealing with it. And I cost him probably hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I caused him tremendous heartache. And I caused my family tremendous heartache. They knew that I was doing this, and I couldn't stop, and they couldn't stop, and I was just a jerk. In the meantime, I was joining a band, and I was having fun, and I met and started dating Dee Dee, who became my first wife. And I went from one apartment, and I eventually moved into the house above the medical office where my dad worked. And so there was a little bit of things coming full circle there. And I worked for my dad's office for 9 years until he passed. And the office tried to stay open with other doctors, but it didn't do very well. And I went on from there to a job at a porn factory, porn distributor, which I'll get into some other time also. But like I say, I ruined my father's business, and my father passed. My father's passing destroyed a big part of my psyche. We had my daughter Kathleen, and she was a couple years old, and my son was on the way when my father passed. And I just felt like my father's passing, I felt like, I felt guilty. I felt like a major contributor to the heartache that my father felt. And the heartache I felt was something that contributed to his death. So, oh my God, shut up. Sorry. And I can get into that another time too. But I felt a tremendous amount of guilt over my father's death, and I still do. Even though I know logically it had nothing to do with me, but I still feel guilty. And so, anyway, so now continuing on with my life, I was working at this porn distributor. And I eventually lost my job there, and so I was looking for something to do. And my wife and I decided to move to her family's place in Racine, Wisconsin, because I figured that I was this high-powered, computer knowledgeable guy in Jersey. I should really easily be able to find something in Wisconsin. I don't know what I was thinking. Why I thought that I would be a big fish in a little pond in Racine. But I spent a year there, and I couldn't find a decent job at all. And I had to rely on my mother-in-law's family, on their kindness. They were so kind to me, and we got on each other's nerves to the point where we were at each other's throats. But initially, they were so kind to me, and they did everything that they could in order to help me and my family, and things ended badly there. And I said to myself, well, if things are going to be bad here, I would rather that we move back to Jersey, where my family and friends are. And so we moved back to Jersey, and we got an apartment out in Jersey, and lived there, but Dee Dee and I weren't very happy, blah blah blah. There's so much story. I have to tell it because essentially. And when we moved back, for one other thing that happened in Wisconsin is we also had my son Leo. So 3 kids now. Moved back from Wisconsin, brand new baby. So we're living in an apartment, the 3 of us, and for a while I get a job back at the porn factory, but I lost that again, and then I got my job at Bank 3, which I kept for the past 10 and a half years, pretty much. During which time Dee Dee and I got divorced. And yet, even though we're divorced, we still live together for quite some time. We're still living together, as a matter of fact. Due to finances, she was never able to move out. And I met my second wife and got married to her, and we were all living together. My new wife and my 3 kids and my ex-wife, all in one house. I'll get to that story some other time, too. That's an interesting story. But my life was just really just this big, crazy, weird mess of all kinds of different things, and happiness and financial devastation. We went bankrupt, and just all these medical problems and medical bills, and Leo had a medical problem with a birth defect in his ear, and I had health problems. I needed in 2005. I needed cardiac angioplasty. There was different things, and I had this new wife, and we got discovered in the apartment with so many people, me and my new wife and my 3 kids and my ex-wife, and so they said that the apartment was not meant for that many people. Get out. And so now we're living in a house in Trenton, and the place is fairly nice. Sometimes the area is a little scary, but that's okay. We've learned to deal with all that, and my family is fine with it now. We kept having all these setbacks, and I kept having more and more health problems, and I kept having more and more personal problems, and I kept having more and more responsibilities, and I kept having just a bunch of different things not go right, and my health, going downhill, and not taking care of myself, and just letting things. I let my living conditions go downhill. I let my health conditions go downhill. I let my family situations go downhill, and I was just getting more and more miserable and depressed, to the point where my second wife, who's 15 years younger than I am, I told her that I started encouraging her a couple of years back to try and find herself a new life, because even though we'd only been married a couple of years, that she should find herself a new life, because I'm a sick old man, and I'm going to start getting sicker and sicker, and she had a chance to have a whole new life with her own family. She could have her own kids and do her own thing, and anyway, so and eventually she did. And fast forward to this year, 2018, where my health over diabetes and hypertension and high cholesterol, and had led me to foot problems, hand problems, eye problems, bathroom problems, erection problems, and many other things. Just a misery of a life. And I had a heart attack in March, which led to me having quadruple bypass surgery in June. The doctor told me that he had high hopes for my operation. He estimated that it was going to be a 1% chance of anything going wrong. because he looked at my condition and he knew that he was confident he could take care of everything. And so, a 1% chance of anything going wrong. I told my job, where I was an accountant at this engineering firm, Bank 3. I was there for 10 and a half years. I told them that no problem. He's going to do this operation, and I'm going to be out of work 2, maybe 3 weeks, and then I'll come back. Well, the operation was a success. The anesthesia fucked me up. The operation was fine, but the anesthesia left me unable to walk more than a few feet. I can only stand like independently, like maybe about 15, 20 seconds without having to hold on to something. I can only walk a few feet without having to grab onto something. And like I said, more bathroom problems, and I had a catheter, and after a few weeks of being in the hospital, I was also loopy for about 5 days. They couldn't communicate with me. When they were finally able to communicate with me, they asked me, Mr. Silverman, what year is it? And I said, it's Trump. But I was finally able to communicate. And when I got out of it, they put me in rehab. And I was dealing in rehab for a few weeks when all of a sudden they came to me and said, Mr. Silverman, your insurance seems to have lapsed. Can you please contact your job? And I contacted them and found out I had been put on leave of absence because I was away so long, and they had terminated my insurance. So I had to leave rehab without being finished. I don't know how long I would have been there. But I came home pretty much jobless, so no money coming in, no insurance, so I only had the amount of medicine left over from what they gave me at rehab, what they let me take home, and I ran out a few weeks later. So I went for a couple of months without medicine, unable to walk, unable to drive. My eyes are bad, so unable to see that well. I can't go out and socialize, so the thing that I really loved, karaoke, I couldn't do. I was doing, at one point, a few years ago, I was doing karaoke 4 or 5 nights a week. And I stopped completely, and I had made a whole circle of karaoke friends, and I didn't talk with any of them. And I dropped off the face of the earth, and they don't know what happened to me. They didn't deserve that. But I stopped talking to them because I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed of what I had become, just this big mess of having let everything slide, having let my health slide, having let my job slide, having let my family slide. Asia, my second wife, like I said, I encouraged her to find herself a life. Well, she did. With my blessing, she found herself a new life, and a couple of months after I came home, she moved out to be with her boyfriend, and I was happy for that. I was happy for her that she found a new life. So, but that was a sad time for me. So, Asia, I'm sorry I mentioned it. But, so, no job, no money coming in. I'm having to be taken care of by my family. I have my children cleaning up after me when I have accidents. No insurance. I have to, I have all of a sudden developed a high sense of anxiety on the phone, which I think may have been another result of the anesthesia. When I call people on the phone, official people, and I don't have all my shit together, I get terrible anxiety, and I have this terrific urge to hang up on them, and I have done that, and I haven't gotten anything done, but it took me forever to get short-term disability, and I still have yet to look into permanent disability, and it took me a long time to get things taken care of. I've had so many new health issues crop up since I've been home, and I haven't taken care of them, mostly because I didn't have insurance to get new medicine. If I had continued my medicine, I would have avoided a whole bunch of new problems that cropped up. And I got super, super miserable, depressed, miserable, just horror show. And I'm sitting here realizing that I'm telling myself that things are not going to get any better, that I'm flat on my back in my room. And so, my job and my relationships and my family, and I've lost, with my not being able to use my hands, I can't play keyboards anymore, which was something I always loved, my music. I can't do karaoke, which I loved. I'm sitting in bed, just watching videos, feeling my brain turn to mashed potatoes, and letting one day blur into another one. I had no idea what day it was. I didn't care whether it was night or day. I was sleeping through days and staying up all night. And, at some point I figured, well, let me see if I could meet new people, and I started going on different dating apps. And like I said, Asia was gone, so I started different, in the dating apps, I was looking for women to talk to. And then I realized, since I'm a little kid, since I'm a teenager, I've had thoughts and feelings and curiosities. And so I was looking into the gay dating sites. There's nothing wrong with that. And I actually felt like it would be something that I could do. And I got just as much no response as the regular dating sites. And I said, let me try something wacky. Let me take a look at the trans dating sites. And I tried that, and they weren't set up really well. You basically had to pay. You had to subscribe to the service in order to get anything great out of it. So I got nothing really out of it. And I tried this other dating site, Meet Me, which was interesting. I got a bunch of response. I listed myself as bisexual. And I went in this dating site, and there's all these live streams, and I met a lot of people. I met a lot of people who were terrible people. I met men that basically just wanted to fuck me and split me open. And I'm an old guy. I can't, first of all, I've never been with a guy. I kind of like my first experience to be something gentle and loving and memorable, if not romantic, I'd like it to be something nice. I don't want it to be something where some guy's goal is to just, tear my body in half. But, so there's just all these horrible guys that ask me about having sex within the first 2 to 3 questions. Hi, how are you? Are you a top or bottom? And then all the women that I'm talking to are just ads for sex sites and want me to pay for their pictures and videos. And so I felt miserable, just all brand new, incredible ways of being miserable there. And so I was feeling really, I had nothing. I feel like I had nothing left. Even my little attempts at trying to start something new were just horrible. And I'm suicidal, but I was suicidal, but not actively. I believe that being suicidal means that you have a plan to do away with yourself, that you're trying to find a way to kill yourself. But me, I just felt hopeless and helpless because I'm so loyal to my family. I knew that the second that something happens to me, that they would be miserable and I would be causing them more misery and I would be causing them more unhappiness in their life. And they already had so much misery and unhappiness because of me. I felt so much guilt and responsibility that I didn't want to cause them any more horror in their life by committing suicide. So I'm just quietly suicidal, just praying to be able to go back in time and die on the operating table, or have some way, like maybe I could fall down the steps and break my neck, which almost happened actually. But so I was just miserable. And then I'm going into the dating app, which is Meet Me, and they have live streams, and I'm entertained by these live streams. I'm watching all these other people go through their lives, and they're talking to these people online. There's a whole big social thing. And I said, let me try streaming a couple of times and seeing what happens. But before I did that, I had an idea. I had an idea that I wanted to be a persona. Now, as I said, one of my favorite things in life was karaoke. And a couple of times I had dressed as female in karaoke, and I had a female persona named Petunia because, and I'll tell this story some other time, but how Petunia came to originally be. But there was this female persona, Petunia, and so I had this wig that I'd had my eye on for the past 3 to 4 years at the Halloween store. This wig here, brunette bombshell. I knew I wanted it, and so I decided to buy it at around that time. And I would do a couple of live streams dressed in the wig, maybe wearing some lipstick, and I would sing karaoke. And I did that, and I had some amazing response. I don't know if I hadn't had amazing response in that first time, where, I mean, I'm not saying that it was amazingly, glowingly positive. There were some people that were jerks, but I was happy that they were jerks. It was entertaining, and I had fun. And the people that were positive about it, I entertained them, and I just had this amazing experience. And I heard Petunia in my head. I heard Petunia. And she said, "This is it." She said, "This is me. This is what I want. You've done enough. It's time for you to take a rest. I want in." And I said, "You know what, Petunia, go ahead. I'm fine with it." And so I decided right then that I was going to see where this took me. And I looked around and I realized that there were some clothes that had been left behind by my second wife. Before she moved out, she left them behind. She didn't pack everything. I tried on those clothes, and I had the wig, and I borrowed some makeup from my first ex-wife and my daughter. And I prepared a number of shows, and I went and I started doing live streams. And I found myself getting ready. I found myself putting makeup on in the mirror. And I took my camera and I started taking selfies of myself in the mirror. And this primitive caveman feeling came into my life. This primitive feeling that I never felt before. I felt feminine. I felt pretty. I felt sexy. I looked in a mirror at someone that I had always just had disdain for so many years in my life. And I felt sexy. And when I went to do my live stream, I felt like Petunia. I was Petunia. I was sexy, and I was pretty, and I was flirty, and I'm happy. I'm happy. And after a few nights of doing live streams, I went down to dinner. I took off my wig because sometimes my wig is hot and I get very hot. I went down to dinner in makeup with my boobs, my balls of socks in my bra, in my shirt. And I'm eating dinner with my daughter, and I'm talking with her, telling her excitedly about all the different experiences I'm having in live streams, about people telling me